Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very warm welcome to you all, as usual, our dear guests, our dear viewers, to this Sophia TV special program on Hajj, a journey of a lifetime. And indeed, that is what the process of Hajj is. And the aim of this show, we've highlighted before, is to make you more comfortable with the process of Hajj and to clear some doubts which you may have had in your mind. And like I always say, I'm your brother, Zuryaab Syed, and I'm with you along this whole journey, inshallah. And we are also joined today by our dear respected Hajj expert, our dear alim, Syed Ali Raza Rizvi, who I would now like to welcome to the show. Dear Syed, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah.
Dear Syed, moving on to the topic for today, we covered previously expenses. Today I wanted to focus upon specifically financial capability. But before I move on to that, I had two preliminary questions for you, with your permission, if that's fine.
Bismillah.
The first is, they say time is money. So in terms of financial capability, how much does a person need to have time in terms of, I'll give you a quick example. A person is working, he has annual leave, he has 20 days to take for holiday, but he can't do it in the time of Hajj. He can do it after. What should a person do then?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you look at the Holy Quran, it talks about Hajj and it says, Al-Hajju ashhurum ma'lumat.
Yes.
So, ma'lumat means basically, it is known months during which you can travel for Hajj. And the 12th month, Islamic calendar month, Dhul Hijjah, is a time when you actually perform the Hajj Tamattu.
Yes.
But you need to perform Umrah Tamattu before that. Now, so you need to travel in time to perform all of those actions.
Yes.
The biggest problem that arises in the current situation is that because everyone has to take a flight,
Yes.
the airlines will have, let's say, certain countries, Muslim countries, will have 100,000 Hajis.
Yes.
So they can only do it in so many months. So what happens is that the people start traveling for Hajj 2 months before. So sometimes I do remember from Pakistan, 56 days. They have to travel for 56 days for Hajj. Minimum 42 days.
Wow.
There may be exceptions of people who are guides, who may be going towards the last week or last 2 weeks before Hajj, and they leave exactly 4 days after Hajj.
Okay.
That's when the first flights begin.
Okay.
So approximately the 13th or the 14th of Dhul Hijjah, the flights will begin to leave or depart Jeddah or Medina.
Yes.
And that's when people can start leaving. Now, from Europe, what happens is that you require, I think, a minimum of 2 weeks.
Okay.
And you can go for 3 weeks, like 20 days, 18 days, 21 days, 24, 28 days.
Okay.
Depending on which group you're taking and which flights. Because if you are entering with a group, sometimes you have to leave with that group.
Okay, I see.
So it is, rather than just Islamic requirements, there are certain requirements by the airlines, by the governments, by Saudi government. So you have to follow all of those rules, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you, dear Syed. And in regards to expenses, I mentioned previously, if a person is financially capable, he has the money for the travel and everything, but expenses-wise, he doesn't. So this means when he goes for the Hajj, he won't have anything to eat, to travel with, hotel costs, he can't afford that. So would Hajj then be wajib on him, technically speaking?
Technically, the Hajj will not be wajib because the expenses of the Hajj are a part of the Hajj, and Hajj is not, sorry to say the word, cheap.
Yes.
Hajj is quite expensive. The minimum amount is, I think, about £4,000 these days.
Yes.
And sometimes even more, depending on what part of the world you're traveling from. The hotels, your stay,
Yes.
Sacrifice, like the Qurbani, as they call it, Hadi or Qurbani or whatever you want to call it in different languages.
Yes.
You have to give an animal. You also have to have, the Hajj clothing, ihram, traveling within, from Mecca to Medina, which is about 560, 70 kilometers.
Yes.
So there are many things to take into account. And the food may not be the cheapest. The Saudi Riyal is quite expensive.
Yes.
It is not the cheapest of the currencies. And Saudi Arabia may have been a very easy country to eat and drink in, but under current circumstances, it is not, the food is not the cheapest. Okay. So you have to consider all of those things before you travel. And the best part in present day is that when you get a package for Hajj,
yes,
they actually tell you if it is half board, full board,
yes,
there are different terms they use. They tell you that this includes everything.
Yes.
And sometimes they say, okay, this includes everything, but not qurbani.
Yes.
So you may have to keep in mind, let's say $200 or more for just these, the animal that you have to buy and sacrifice on the 10th of Zil Hijjah in Hajj, because it is wajib. I think there's a lot to consider, and when we talk about the obligations of Hajj in the oncoming episodes, we will give more details. But overall, a person should remember that financial means for all of the expenses of Hajj are a must.
Yes. No, thank you, dear Syed. There was a very important point you mentioned there, because I've known of people who go over the Hajj group, but they don't check the fine details, as you mentioned, what's included, what's not. And there's a lot of issues when they go there that, I thought the Qurbani was included. Why are you asking now? And they get told that you didn't read the fine line. So it's a very good point there. Thank you, dear Syed.
And you know what? I remember going with groups where they said everything is included except for food.
Oh my God. Okay.
So we had to buy our own food, because what happens is that they get the food and, people are not in time for food. So it's now gone cold, and they don't have the kitchens, for example, in certain places, or the hotels may say, well, now, we are preparing for the evening. We've now cleaned up. So people have a lot of complaints about, I want to eat at 1 o'clock. Some people say, no, I don't want to eat at 1 o'clock. I want to eat at 12. Well, I want to eat at 2. So many groups usually say that, okay, we will charge you less, but you have to buy your own food. And the food is not going to be, it's very well easily available, every area in Makkah and Medina, but it will not be, well, it may not be very expensive like in many of the Western countries, but it is not going to be the cheapest either, depending on where you eat.
Thank you, dear Syed. Now, coming to the topic of financial capability, we mentioned previously people with mortgages or student loans are allowed to go. But what's about different types of debt, such as dowry or kafara? What do those people do? Can they still go to Hajj?
According to, say, the Sistani, a person must pay his wife the full amount of dowry, or she forgives or says that I gifted to you the amount of dowry. Unfortunately, many countries, the dowry amounts are very high. And you can either buy a small house or a big car, or more than the capability or capacity of Hajj expenses. And a person must have the financial capability after paying the dowry and also paying the kafarat or the penalties. For example, a person has broken his fast in the month of Ramadan, then he has to feed 60 people. Or there are many other penalties. A person may have, unfortunately, hit his child or something and make a mark. And for that, there is a penalty in Islam. If it is yellow mark, if it is red mark, if it is blue, each one has a different penalty. And all of those penalties must be paid off before a person calculates the means, financial means for going to Hajj.
Okay. And just on that point, they say we might have some viewers watching who didn't know of this, and they went to Hajj thinking that they did it according to their knowledge, correct? Now they've come back, they're watching this show, and they found out that these were meant to be paid off before. Is their Hajj acceptable?
The Hajj is acceptable, but they must repent for doing something that they may have made a mistake. Yes. Now, we may, for example, a person has taken personal debt.
Yes.
And he has to take authorization from that person before he travels to Hajj. That, do you allow me? Can I pay your debt after my return?
Yes.
And if that person does not authorize you, you have to pay their debt before you travel to Hajj. And that is a must. It is wajib to pay the debt. Now, if a person did not take authorization and they have performed their Hajj, and later they find out that they had to pay the loan before they had, now that they have the means, they must pay the loan and also must repent for performing something that they have done, which they did not have the authorization.
Thank you, dear Syed. And just on that part there, Syed, I know we've said previously that you can have debts from like student loan mortgages and the like, but what if a person specifically takes debt from like a loan company for Hajj and all the expenses? Is that allowed?
If a person already has the means, but he doesn't use that, and then takes a debt, then it is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if a person doesn't have the means and he takes a loan to perform, that is not acceptable.
Okay, I see. So the main aim is not to put yourself in a financially incapable position before or after. Okay. They say we now have some basic questions which I would like to clarify for our viewers, if with your permission, please. The first is that should the normal adult Muslim strive to be financially able to perform Hajj? For example, working long hours, making yourself tired, is that allowed within Islam?
It is allowed, but it is not wajib. There's a difference between something which is permissible and something which is obligatory.
Yes.
For example, I have to explain it a little bit. When the time for prayer comes, a person has to try and find water to perform ablution.
Yes.
And if they cannot perform ablution, then they must do tayammum to perform the prayers. It is an obligation to try and find water. But it is not wajib for a person to make themselves mustati'. Okay. So it is not wajib to achieve capability. So it is not an obligation upon a person to attain the ability financially to go to Hajj. So they don't have to do overtime to make the means to go to Hajj. Okay. But if they ever became capable financially, then it becomes wajib upon them to go to Hajj.
Thank you, dear Syed, for that beautiful explanation. Just moving on to the final question for today. If a person it's obligatory for him to do Hajj on himself, can he do someone else's for them who's not able to do so? Or should he do his own first?
A person must perform their own Hajj if it is wajib upon them, before they can perform someone else's niyabat on behalf of someone else. If they are performing someone else's Hajj for whatever reason, they must perform their own Hajj before performing someone else's. Even if it was a very close family member, like they had respect of their father, they want to perform their father's Hajj first, they cannot. If Hajj is wajib upon them, then they must perform their own wajib Hajj first, and then the following year they can go to perform the Hajj of another person.
Okay, so someone else's due comes after. It's you yourself first.
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to add one point, that according to the society, that if a person has performed the Hajj without istita'ah, a person was not mustati', does not have financial capability, and he performed the Hajj, he took a loan and went on Hajj, that Hajj will be accepted as not his or her Hajjatul Islam.
Okay.
And they will have to later perform that Hajj again once they have the ability, because that Hajj will be accepted as an ibadat, but not the wajib Hajj that they had to perform.
Okay, I see.
After the capability.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that there, Syed. That's a very, very important point. I'm sure our dear viewers really benefited from that session we had today with our dear respected Syed Ali Raza Rizvi. Like I mentioned, this is a journey we're going through together. So inshallah, it would be our honor to see you in our next episode, where we're going to be focusing upon the money that you use to go to Hajj, in terms of where you collect it from, where you accumulate it, the different sources. So please do stay tuned. You do not want to miss this. Inshallah, see you in our next episode on Sophia TV, Hajj, a journey of a lifetime. Please remember us in your du'as. Until next time, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.